Many chosen ones reach a point in their journey where they begin to feel something different inside. Things that once brought joy suddenly lose their sparkle without warning. This silent change often causes fear, as the person believes they're fading or losing sensitivity. But in truth, this emptiness is not an end. It is the beginning of something new. When God decides to shape a chosen one, He starts by adjusting their inner senses. What once brought quick excitement no longer satisfies, not because you're broken, but because it no longer aligns with what God is building within you. This emotional silence is like clearing the ground to make space for deeper, more mature, and longer-lasting seeds. This stage can bring doubts, but it's precisely in this moment that the heart begins to be reorganized by God Himself. It is a process of refinement, where He removes old layers to reveal a strength you have not yet discovered. Before we go further into this reflection, I want to ask something special. Follow this channel to keep receiving messages that strengthen, guide, and bring light to the journey of the chosen ones. Let's walk together. There are moments in the life of the chosen when the brightness of things seems to disappear without warning. What once brought a smile now feels distant. The person looks at activities that once brought joy and realizes that nothing provokes the same inner response. This initial feeling usually causes fear because it gives the impression that something essential has been lost, as if the heart had been switched off from within. However, this emptiness does not mean spiritual decline. It is, in many cases, the clearest sign that God has begun to move in depths within you that you have never accessed before. This process does not come accompanied by grand signs. It is a silent movement, almost imperceptible at first. The soul stops reacting with enthusiasm to things that once seemed special, and this absence of emotion creates confusion. Many chosen ones believe they are growing cold, that something is wrong, that their faith has weakened. But the opposite is true. God begins to gently remove everything that once fed the soul only superficially. He does not do this to sadden you, but to free you. Much of human joy is tied to internal needs. Food tastes delicious because there was hunger. Someone's attention feels special because there was loneliness. An event brings excitement because there was boredom. Most joys come as responses to need, not as the result of fullness. God sees this clearly. He knows when you're experiencing real peace and when you're merely using small distractions to ease internal discomfort. He knows when your soul is resting in Him and when it is simply staying busy to avoid the emptiness. Out of love, He removes fragile supports. He silences stimuli that once kept the mind distracted and the heart entertained. He turns off quick pleasures that served as temporary relief. Not because you have failed, but because you are growing. God needs to dismantle the old foundations to build a new structure within you. What is fading is not your spiritual life. It is the illusion that kept you trapped in emotional cycles, unable to sustain what He is planning. This internal disconnection is not a sign of spiritual death, but of cleansing. The soul is not losing sensitivity. It is being refined. The spirit is being prepared to perceive God in depth, not merely through external stimuli. The chosen one stops depending on what they feel and begins to learn to recognize God in silence. This is uncomfortable because the human mind has been trained to associate presence with emotion. But God is not confined to what you feel. He is constant, even when your heart feels neutral. When the brightness of things disappears, God is expanding your spiritual senses. When enthusiasm fades, He is strengthening your roots. When emotion falls silent, He is adjusting your perception. None of this is loss. It is transition. It is God making room within you to place something that does not depend on stimulation, adrenaline, or sensation. He is preparing your heart for a kind of joy that does not come from the world. It comes from the Spirit. When God begins to turn off the old sources of excitement, a kind of inner silence arises, one that many do not understand. Nothing looks wrong on the outside, but something inside you changes drastically. Activities that once brought joy lose their effect. Conversations that once felt light now exhaust you. Situations that once distracted you no longer work. This is not ordinary discouragement. It is God removing the emotional supports that kept you tied to an outdated version of yourself. He does this slowly, like someone undoing a delicate knot. He doesn't steal your sensitivity. He simply frees you from the dependency on superficial stimuli that once shaped your mood. During this time, the soul tries to react. It searches for the old triggers, tries to recreate familiar sensations, attempts to relive the comfort it once knew. But nothing responds. The heart doesn't light up, the mind doesn't stir, the body doesn't feel that surge of energy. This lack of reaction is not a sign that you've regressed spiritually. It's proof that you are being separated from what once emotionally controlled you. It is God closing internal doors so you don't return to what no longer serves you. When He wants to mature someone, He prevents the past from continuing to influence them. That's why pleasant activities become neutral, intense emotions grow quiet, and natural enthusiasm disappears. Because God is turning off what once fed your soul without truly strengthening it. This change reveals an important truth. Much of what we once called joy was only a response to need, not fullness. You were excited because you had emotional hunger. You distracted yourself because there was some emptiness. You got emotional because something hurt inside. Now God no longer wants you to live trapped by these reactions. He begins cutting away everything that kept your soul busy so that it can finally learn to rest. He leads you to a place where emotions no longer rule, where sensations no longer define your faith, where silence no longer means absence. In this process, many people interpret inner silence as a sign of divine distance, but it's exactly the opposite. When you stop being moved by emotional impulses, you finally become sensitive to what is spiritual. God doesn't shout amid emotional noise. He speaks in the quiet of the soul. When nothing excites you, it's because He's changing the way you perceive His presence. It's not that He's gone. It's that you're being trained to see Him without depending on feelings. The heart is being taught to recognize God by truth, not by emotional impact. This stage is not comfortable, but it is necessary. It's in this stage that illusions are stripped away. It's where the heart learns not to seek God for effect, but for essence. It's where you stop moving based on what you feel and start moving by conviction. It's a season of silent reconstruction, where old layers are torn down so stronger ones can rise. And even if it still feels empty, that emptiness is the space God is creating for what truly matters. He is repositioning you from the inside out. After this inner silence settles, the chosen one enters an even deeper phase, the discovery that nothing from the past can fill the inside anymore. Everything that used to work simply stops reaching you. No matter how much you try to repeat old habits or seek familiar stimuli, nothing awakens that immediate feeling of life. This is not your failure. It's God stopping you from going back to the cycle He Himself decided to end. When He closes an inner door, not even you can reopen it. What once touched your heart now passes straight through because you've been stretched, expanded, matured. This is the point where many fall into confusion, believing they are growing cold spiritually, when in fact they are being strengthened. God is teaching you to distinguish feeling from presence. Emotion may disappear, but God does not. The intensity may decrease, but his faithfulness never changes. This phase reveals that you don't need to feel something strong to be close to God. His presence doesn't depend on your emotion. It remains even when your heart feels neutral. This is maturity, not loss. During this time, the soul realizes it has been built for too long upon sensations. You thought you were spiritually strong because you felt a lot. You thought you were sensitive because you became emotional easily. You thought you were connected because your body reacted. But now God doesn't want you to confuse emotional sensitivity with spiritual sensitivity anymore. He is teaching you to remain, not to fluctuate. He's training you to recognize his voice without needing external signs, without depending on an emotional atmosphere to move. It's in this prolonged silence that stability is born. You stop chasing stimulation and start finding rest in God, even when nothing special happens. You learn that faith is not what moves you emotionally, but what sustains you. You learn that God doesn't need to impress you to guide you. You learn that his presence is revealed more in everyday life than in extraordinary moments. This stability changes everything. It makes your soul firm. It keeps you from being carried away by the day's fluctuations. It teaches you to walk with conviction, not with sensations. Over time, a completely new kind of joy emerges. It's not that explosive joy that lasts only a few hours and fades away. It's a silent, steady, gentle joy. It doesn't need triggers, doesn't depend on events, doesn't require stimulation. It is born of the Spirit and sustained in the Spirit. It's a joy that doesn't fluctuate because it doesn't come from anything temporary. It arises from the certainty that God is there, even when you feel nothing. This mature joy is the final result of the process. It proves that the period of emptiness was not a loss, but preparation. You didn't lose sensitivity. You gained depth. You didn't lose brightness. You gained roots. You didn't lose enthusiasm. You gained stability. God was rebuilding you from within so that you could live a faith that cannot be shaken. A faith that remains even when emotion goes silent. When the soul enters this phase where everything feels silent, God begins to work in inner areas you didn't even know needed adjusting. He removes old impulses and guides you to a place where emotional dependency loses power. This process exposes hidden fragilities, not to wound you, but to strengthen what needs to be rebuilt more solidly and truthfully. During this stage, it's common to feel as if you're losing something. The mind insists on telling you that you're regressing, but in truth, you're being refined. God removes what kept you attached to the past, even good things that once brought you joy. He does this to open inner space because what's coming requires a heart that is firmer, more focused, and more prepared for greater spiritual responsibility. This period also reveals deep layers you carried unknowingly. The silence makes clear how certain emotions ruled your life. You realize that you reacted, moved, and decided based on stimuli, not conviction. Now God pulls you away from those reactions so you can learn to walk in greater stability. It's a process of maturity that demands total surrender, even when nothing seems to make sense. With time, you recognize that this emotional neutrality isn't punishment, but an invitation to develop new perceptions. Spiritual sensitivity becomes more refined because it's no longer mixed with emotional excess. God begins to show you things you couldn't see before. The soul becomes quieter on the inside, but clearer on the outside. This clarity completely changes how you see every situation. In this phase, it's common to feel the need to withdraw from noisy environments. Conversations that once were tolerable now feel exhausting. The soul is learning to choose more carefully what nourishes it. God teaches you that not everything deserves your energy, and that certain connections must be re-evaluated. It's not isolation, but separation. He removes you from what distracted you so that you can hear Him better. This inner reorganization also leads you to rethink your priorities. What once seemed essential loses value, while simple things gain depth. You begin to realize that God doesn't want to fill your emptiness with emotions, but with His presence. He transforms your emotional structure, removing the excess until you can find stability even when everything around you is still. That balance will become your new foundation. Slowly, the mind stops resisting the process. You begin to accept that this isn't a season of loss, but of transition. The heart learns to trust the silence, understanding that God works most powerfully when everything seems still. It's in this stage that deep convictions, revelations, and perceptions are born, the ones that don't depend on feelings. It's a more mature and consistent awakening. As this phase progresses, you realize you've become more selective, more sensitive to what truly matters. God uses this silence to teach you to rest within yourself without waiting for stimuli. He prepares you for a new cycle where your emotions no longer control you. It's an emotional and spiritual reconstruction. And when this process ends, you discover that you're not empty, but full of essence. The transformation continues when you realize that old feelings no longer command your steps. The heart, once so dependent on intense movements, now begins to stabilize. This stability is not coldness, but maturity. God is teaching you to live beyond emotional oscillation. He is shaping you to stop reacting to what is temporary and start responding to what is eternal, solid, and aligned with His will. At this moment, you discover that most of your old enthusiasms were merely escapes, things that served as emotional relief valves, not sources of true fulfillment. God allows those things to lose their effect so you can learn not to confuse relief with purpose. He guides you away from distractions that once seemed normal but hindered your growth. It's a painful detachment, but a necessary one. This process also reveals your true strength. The soul, once so restless, begins to rest. It's as if God were reducing every excess to reveal who you are without interference. The stability that emerges brings a new perception. You realize you can exist without depending on constant stimuli. Life stops being an internal race and becomes a conscious, balanced walk, guided by peace. As this transition advances, your thoughts begin to reorganize themselves. Things that once pressured you start losing their impact. The mind learns to filter what truly matters. God reveals to you that many worries were nothing more than noise, and that your energy was being wasted on matters without purpose. He teaches you to save your soul and invest it where true growth takes place. At this stage, a new way of feeling God's presence is born. It is no longer that strong, immediate sensation you used to chase. Now it's something deeper, constant, gentle, yet far more real. You discover that He has always been there, even when your emotions didn't respond. This is when faith becomes mature. It no longer depends on sensations to exist. It rests on the inner certainty that God Himself places within you. As this happens, your relationships also go through adjustments. You begin to notice that certain connections no longer follow your spiritual rhythm. Sometimes this creates natural distance. Other times, conversations simply change tone. These changes are part of divine separation. God is protecting your newly formed sensitivity, preventing external noise from robbing the depth He is building within you. Amid all these changes, a new kind of joy starts to arise. It's not that impulsive joy that appears and fades quickly. It's a calm, steady joy that remains even when nothing special happens. It's a joy born of the Spirit, not of circumstances. It takes root and grows over time. It's a sign that God has completed an important stage of your inner reconstruction. This new joy prepares you for the next level of your walk. You understand that God did not lead you into silence to empty you, but to align you. He was training you to live without depending on stimuli, and to feel more deeply. When this phase ends, you realize that you haven't lost anything. You've gained a stronger, more aware, and more connected version of yourself. When God begins to distance you from environments and people that no longer align with what He's forming within you, a new kind of sensitivity is born. It's as if the soul begins to recognize what no longer builds you up. Conversations feel heavy. Places that once felt normal now feel strange. And certain bonds begin to lose strength. This isn't rejection. It's divine protection, preparing you for something greater. In this phase, a deep need for inner silence emerges. It's not emotional isolation, but a spontaneous desire to get away from the noise that clouds your spiritual perception. God reduces the movement around you to teach you to listen to your own soul. You learn that not everything deserves your presence, and that your energy must be preserved for what truly matters. At the same time, a subtle spiritual discomfort arises whenever something isn't aligned with your new purpose. Situations that once went unnoticed now affect you. You recognize hidden intentions, feel when an environment is heavy, and clearly perceive when God is guiding you to step back. This sensitivity is the result of an inner cleansing that He carries out in silence. This process also helps you see your own changes. Your desires change, your priorities shift, and your perspective on the world adjusts. What used to be entertainment becomes distraction. What used to be companionship becomes noise. What used to be habit becomes a burden. God is revealing that you no longer fit where you once did, because your inner structure is being renewed. Even if it feels like loss, it is growth. God does not remove what gives you stability. He removes what blocks your advancement. He distances you from excess so that you may draw closer to Him. And when the soul grows accustomed to this new rhythm, you realize that silence doesn't hurt. It matures. What once seemed like emptiness turns into clarity. What once felt like distance becomes protection. What once felt like loneliness becomes divine presence. When this process of spiritual separation advances, you begin to notice an even deeper transformation. Your perception of yourself completely changes. God teaches you to no longer depend on the validation of others to feel secure. You begin to see yourself through His eyes and not through the lens of other people's expectations. This brings an inner freedom that is impossible to describe. At the same time, an unexpected emotional strength is born. Situations that used to shake you no longer have the same impact. Words that once hurt you lose their meaning. The soul stops living on the surface and begins walking in depth. God strengthens inner areas that were once fragile. You don't become hardened. You mature. It's a gentle but firm resilience built in the spirit. This new emotional structure also redefines your relationship with struggles. Instead of seeing challenges as threats, you begin to see them as training. Every difficulty becomes an opportunity for growth. Every silence becomes a lesson. Every discomfort becomes shaping. God turns what once paralyzed you into fuel for your evolution. What was once a burden becomes preparation. When God decides to elevate a chosen one to a new level, He starts by taking away the sources of stimulation that sustained the old emotional cycle. And he doesn't do this to make you cold or distant. He does it to free you from dependencies you didn't even know you had. Many of the things that once brought you joy weren't producing growth. They were just filling internal gaps. Now that God wants to expand your vision, He needs to cleanse what was keeping you attached to the superficial. That's why nothing excites you anymore. What once satisfied you no longer matches your spirit. A soul being prepared for greater things can no longer fit into the old molds. The emptiness you feel is not absence. It's transition. It's God creating space for a maturity you could never reach if you kept being moved by the same stimuli. This process also reveals a deep truth. Your heart is being trained to depend less on emotions and more on purpose. God is strengthening your faith so that it doesn't waver when feelings change. He is teaching you to walk with conviction even when your soul is silent. This is how He shapes spiritual warriors, not through intense emotions, but through inner stability. Nothing excites you anymore because you're being disconnected from what is shallow. God is showing you that growth doesn't happen in euphoria, but in depth. He distances you from distractions, quiets your inner noise, closes emotional doors that once moved you, and allows you to face silence. And in that silence, you discover something you wouldn't have found any other way: who you are without external support. So when you find yourself unable to feel what you once felt, remember, this is not the end. It's the beginning. It's God guiding you toward a more stable, solid, and genuine joy. Not a joy based on stimuli, but on His presence. And when this new phase arrives, you'll realize that what seemed like emptiness was actually God creating space for something much greater. Have you ever felt this way? Comment and help other chosen ones understand their journey.